The secret behind the counter. Takeru was just an ordinary guy. Schoolwork, homework, friends, everything was like for everyone else. But he had one secret. Every night after school, he would sneak off to a small cafe on the outskirts of town where he worked as a barista. But no one, not even his classmates, knew about it. Takeru was afraid that if it was found out, his reputation would be ruined. He was just an average guy, and the cafe was a well-known spot for true gourmets, so his job there could become a subject of mockery. One day, as usual, he was taking orders and preparing coffee when the door swung open, and she walked in, Ayuumi, the most popular and mysterious girl in school. He had never seen her in this cafe before, and his heart skipped a beat. How could she be here? Ayuumi ordered a strawberry latte, sat at a table in the corner, and opened her laptop. Takeru tried not to look in her direction, but his gaze kept catching her long hair and her soft smile. It was too much. When he accidentally glanced at her, their eyes met. Ayuumi smiled lightly. "You work here?" she asked with mild surprise, as though she hadn't suspected anything. Takeru froze, but only nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Strange, I've never seen you here before," she remarked, continuing to sip her drink. "You must be good at what you do. This latte is perfect." Takeru blushed, muttered a thank you, and stepped back to the counter. His heart raced. How would he act now? How could he hide his secret? The next morning at school, Ayuumi appeared again, her enigmatic gaze locking with his. But instead of the usual questions about homework or classes, she made a strange offer. "You can cook, right? I have a proposition for you." The deal. Ayuumi quickly revealed her secret. She participated in cooking competitions, but she didn't want anyone to know about it. Her ambitions were high, but she couldn't find the right partner for the contests. Takeru, with his skills in making coffee and desserts, was the perfect candidate. But she made a strange deal. She would keep his secret and never tell anyone about his job at the cafe if he agreed to help her prepare for the competitions. At first, Takeru didn't know what to say. But he felt something between them, and he agreed. This marked the beginning of their unusual friendship. They trained together every evening, making complicated desserts and discussing recipes. Takeru was amazed by her passion for cooking and her ability to handle the most complex ingredients. But their collaboration wasn't without its mishaps. One day, while training, they argued over the best way to make a strawberry pie. Ayuumi insisted on using a secret ingredient, while Takeru was sure the recipe should be classic. "This is too risky," he said, shaking his head. "Are you afraid to try something new?" she asked, her voice growing slightly cold. "I'm not afraid," Takeru replied with a smile. "I just don't want to disappoint you." And in that small argument, in the battle for the best recipe, they began to understand each other more. Each time Takeru accidentally knocked over a pot or forgot the cooking time, Ayuumi didn't laugh at him but simply helped him up and encouraged him to continue. Secrets revealed. One day, just before the big cooking competition, they were faced with a new challenge. A competitor started suspecting that they were hiding something. But despite the difficulties, Takeru and Ayuumi not only managed to win the competition but also truly became friends. And possibly something more. A whirlwind of emotions. The cooking contest became a real test for Takeru and Ayuumi. A couple of days before it began, the pressure was mounting. Every mistake could be disastrous. Takeru was completely absorbed in the preparations, but he couldn't help but notice how his relationship with Ayuumi was changing. They were spending more and more time together, and it was beginning to affect his feelings. Ayuumi was truly passionate about cooking, and her enthusiasm was contagious. Takeru felt more and more that he couldn't let her down. Their partnership became stronger, and their shared training sessions were no longer limited to just cooking. Between their work, they talked a lot, laughed, and started opening up to each other. One night, when they were the only ones left in the kitchen after everyone else had gone home, Ayuumi suddenly said, "You know, I never thought I'd be working with someone so sincere. You always care so much about making everything perfect, and I love that about you." Takeru looked at her, a bit bewildered. You show me a lot too. I never knew you could get so passionate about something," he replied. Ayuumi smiled, but her expression became a little more thoughtful. You know, I've never told anyone this, but I was so lonely. Everyone around me always saw me as someone I'm not. But with you, it's different. Takeru froze. His heart began to race faster. He didn't know how to respond, because the words just didn't come. The conversation had been so unexpected that he couldn't find his thoughts. But one thing was clear to him. These moments were important. The contest begins. On the day of the competition, everything was ready. Takeru and Ayuumi stood in the cooking hall, surrounded by tension and noise. All the teams were preparing, and the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. As they began cooking their desserts, time seemed to slow down. Takeru felt his hands shaking a little, but when he looked at Ayuumi, he saw her confident face. It gave him strength. Don't worry, you'll do fine. All we need to do is work together, like we always do, she said with a light smile, as if it was just another day in the kitchen. Her calmness touched him. He nodded and continued cooking. At that moment, he realized he didn't fear revealing his secret anymore. He was ready to share it with the world, because he and Ayuumi had become a team, and that meant more than anything else. The cooking process was difficult. They ran into problems, from burned dough to ingredient miscalculations, but despite all the struggles, they didn't give up. Ayuumi remained the source of confidence, and Takeru was her support during the hard moments. Together, they created a culinary masterpiece. When they presented their final dish to the judges, Takeru realized that it didn't matter whether they took first place or not. What mattered was their teamwork, their secret, and the friendship that had grown into something more. An unexpected revelation. When everything was over and the judges went off to evaluate the dishes, the competitors started joking and speculating about who was behind such culinary genius. But before the situation could spiral out of control, Ayuumi unexpectedly spoke up and confessed. "This is my secret. Yes, I've been participating in these contests, but I did it with the help of someone who probably didn't expect to be part of it. Takeru is my partner. And this is our shared victory." Everyone went silent. For a few moments, they stood in stillness, but soon the applause began. Suddenly, Ayuumi and Takeru found themselves at the center of attention, realizing that their secret was no longer a secret. But it didn't matter. A new chapter. That evening, after the competition ended and everyone had scattered, Takeru and Ayuumi sat at the same cafe where it all began. This time, their conversation was much more open and relaxed. "You know, I'm glad we're not hiding secrets anymore," Takeru said, looking at her with a smile. Ayuumi smiled back, but her eyes seemed a little more thoughtful. "This feels like the start of a new chapter. Not just for the contest, but for us." Takeru didn't answer immediately, because a thought just crossed his mind, that this chapter might go on for much longer. Possibly much longer than they had expected. End of Season 1.